Hello and welcome to In the Court of Wenton Knave. We're reviewing Zappa. I'm going through the whole catalogue. These are only mini reviews, obviously, due to my lack of worthiness. Today we are doing Waka, Jawaka. Obviously, after Hot Rats was a success, he did go into the studio to record a follow-up, but it was aborted. So some of that ended up on Chunga's Revenge, but the full, proper follow-up to Hot Rats is Waka, Jawaka. You can see that from the Hot Rats taps. It's interesting listening to them in order of release because obviously he went in one direction, then he goes in a completely opposite direction. So in a way they don't fit in order, the albums. I mean, really, you've got this is the second in a trilogy, really, starting with Hot Rats. But unfortunately, obviously, it was due to circumstances. He moved away from the Flo and Eddie band. He'd been injured in a concert-related push off stage and was severely injured, and in fact damaged his throat. At the way he fell, his chin was actually stuck behind his shoulder, which is pretty nasty, and that actually affected his voice and made him sing lower. And it's funny, actually, on those last couple of albums, there's a little bit of high singing on there from Frank. Which you don't hear again, you can't do it anymore. But that deeper voice actually suits the music, all the satire and all that stuff. However, there's not much vocals on this. There's 2 songs on there which have vocals, but that's not what it's known for. He's moved in a completely different direction, very much in the fusion category, followed to Hot Rats, but much more so. It does sound like he's been listening to Vishnu Orchestra, possibly Bitches Brew, things like that. It's jazz. Of course, he's never used the word jazz, but it's very difficult to not make reference to that in this period. The other big thing is his guitar playing. And there's some great guitar playing on the last couple of albums. I mean, particularly on Phil Maurice, there's some good stuff on Willie the Pimp, obviously as a result of touring. But I get the impression, because he was forcibly removed from touring, I think he sat down and practiced, possibly been listening to John McLaughlin, that's what people say. Because there is a leap in his guitar playing here, I think. And in a way, what you hear on here is the prototype for what we hear for the next 15 years. And obviously there's some fantastic playing to come. Frank's solos are part of his arsenal. I mean, you've got the modern classical, you've got the satirical, you've got the doo-wop, got whatever, etc, etc. And one of those things is the guitar solos, which is a section of music. Now, he doesn't have the technical ability of the musicians he hires, not by this time, and there's nothing wrong with that, obviously. He's just hiring the best people to play his music, and obviously later on he had a stunt guitarist to play the harder stuff. So when the band's got much more complex with their music later on, the section where Frank would play his solos was generally just 1 or 2 chords for him to play over, which is very different to the kind of things the other band members were playing over. So in that sense, they are simpler. But like with modal jazz, like with Kind of Blue, a lot of this is almost 1 chord, and then there's a chord change later on. And what that means is you don't fall into just riffing on established sounds. So in a way, if you've got a lot of chords, you end up jamming, not really improvising. If you haven't got many chords, you can improvise because that freedom makes you invent new things. Now, Frank's guitar playing was not in the normal category of guitar histrionics, and he kind of had a disdain for that kind of thing, or expression of a disdain. He didn't like noodling. Noodling was the word he would use. But what he's doing on the guitar is very different from what Steve Vai, in a way, often does on the guitar. He's searching for melodies. He's writing, and that's what he called it, an instant way of writing music. There's different ways of composing. A lot of his compositions were scored. Obviously, he would sit there and score music. That was kind of his hobby. In his spare time, he would sit there writing, and that's how he ended up with so much music. But another way of writing is recording yourself playing guitar solos. And it is fascinating to listen to how he wrote the stuff. Supposedly, he would see shapes. So he would see, right, that's a triangle there, and then I'll do a circle, and very sort of logical in his thinking about where the notes are going to be, rather than close your eyes and feel the playing. He's composing, so he's thinking, well, if I do that position there, what will that sound like? What will it sound like? And that's why in the end he ended up releasing whole albums of the stuff. In many ways, this is a real turning point in that respect. It's not considered a bona fide classic, even though one of the songs I really like. It's one of my favourites. It's got 2 good songs and 2 very mediocre songs, but the mediocre songs are very short. And it's the 2 good songs which pointed the way for where he was going later. And conversely, the 2 poorer songs sound like outtakes of Flo and Eddie, actually. That does Flo and Eddie a disservice. They weren't good enough to go on their albums, I don't think. So it's interesting he included them on the album. Maybe there's something there I'm missing, but there you go. But it opens with Big Swifty. One of my favourite Zappa pieces. The syncopated melodic stuff going on. All that stuff. I love all that stuff. This is a side-long jam, 17 minutes. So that's not something to be taken lightly. There's a couple of good versions. The subsequent tour, which obviously we'll talk about next week featured a faster performance of it, which is available on, you can't do that on Stage Anymore Volume 1. I think that Volume 1 is worth getting. And there's also, predictably, a version by the 88 band, which is also very, very good. I don't know whether it's better than the original. Maybe it is better than the original. Not sure. There's some fantastic playing on that. It should be in it. That song should be in anyone's Zappa collection. We go on to Your Mouth. Just a 3-minute ditty, really. It's blues rock, pretty forgettable. It's B-side stuff for it. I'm surprised it's even in there. And it might be just a one-shot deal as well. The next song, same kind of thing. It's probably, maybe it's not quite as run-of-the-mill as Your Mouth, but there's not much to say about it. But we end the album with Waka Jawaka, the title track. Not as extended as the first track, but less intense and syncopated and than Big Swifty. Much more kind of tasteful, not smooth. But you know, if you play that to someone, they'd say it was jazz. All those horns and everything. It's a great piece. It's a great piece, and ends an album which in a way is a bit inconsistent but features some fantastic stuff. Those two tracks are worth getting. See you next week.